Look, in light of a couple of things that have just transpired, the announcement in Baltimore that 6 police officers are going to face homicide charges following the death of this fellow Freddie Gray after he was arrested. He was put inside a police van, being taken to the police station. Of course, when they realized that he was having some difficulty, he was sent to a hospital, and within a few days later, he died. And the cause of death is reported as his spine being 80% severed. Well, that is going to be something that will rock that city again, perhaps this weekend, and it could rock other American cities. I just saw at the website of the Philadelphia Inquirer early this morning that they are preparing for this announcement even there, because there are worries that this is going to send people into the streets, and the discount shopping will begin once again when we reach sunset tonight and through the weekend. 8 minutes now after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you today. Also, I'll take some reaction if you have it to our last guest, Brigitte Gabriel, who was joining us here on air. And again, it is going to be in Caldwell that she is speaking next week. We have some details on that. And in fact, if you feel that you need to know more about this, there's a couple of things you can do. You can go hear her speak when she is here next Thursday night, and that is going to be at Deer Flat Church, and that is on Beat Road in Caldwell. She's going to speak at 7 o'clock at night, as she pointed out. They don't publicize these things too far in advance because she gets death threats. Some of these Islamists, they know exactly. It's a bit like confronting the devil. And they know exactly that she is pulling the curtain back and showing people what they are really all about, and they don't want someone doing that, and they'd like to intimidate people. And that's not unusual. I had Ann Coulter on a radio show with me some years ago, and there were people who were demanding that we not have her on the air, and then she came to speak, and she was going to go have dinner with a group of us following her presentation. And she had to be taken out by a police escort after her speech and taken back to the hotel under guard because there were so many of these fruitcakes who were threatening her. Why? She doesn't go around causing anyone any physical harm. She just speaks her mind, and unfortunately, you've got these drooling people on the American left who just can't. They don't have any patience for that. 48 now at our studios. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You can reach us at 736-0300, and you're up next. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Bill. I just wanted to thank you a lot for having Bridget on. I've heard her on the Sean Hannity show before, and she is excellent, isn't she?
Oh, I'll tell you what, her own experience, having gone through, the one video that I watched where she explained how her family lost their home and they were living in rubble and they were just trying to survive as the Islamists were coming forward and moving through the city and just essentially driving every Christian out or killing them that they encountered. She has experienced this, and most of your screaming memes on the left in this country who try to silence her, they have no experience like that whatsoever in their lives.
Right.
They need to sit back and they need to listen to her.
She is one brave woman. I just wanted to thank you for having her on.
Thank you much for the call, sir. And again, you can reach us at 736-0300. That is 736-0300. Also, my email address, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. That is bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. I spell the last name Colley, in case you're wondering out there. There are multiple spellings on that. No, I'm no relation to any furry creatures that walk around on 4 legs and rescue people from fires. And, when I was a kid, I used to wonder, though, why Lassie had so dang many of these owners. And everybody seemed to be nice to the dog, but the dog was always running away and then getting... what happened is the actor who played the owner kept looking at those scripts and saying, this is for kids, not for adults. And then the actor would quit, so Lassie would need a new owner. But it's a different spelling. I want to point that out. She was no relation. This actually was what I was referencing when we were talking with Brigitte Gabriel, Refugee Resettlement Watch. And the headline is, Idaho to get an influx of Syrian refugees beginning in October. Now, they picked this up simply because they managed to get a Google alert from the Times News, which on its website had published a story about this. And Ann Corcoran is writing there. She says, by the way, there's an update. They received an email from the Times News asking us to remove the photo we posted of Muslims praying in a Magic Valley mosque. And as soon as we saw the request, we honored it. But you can actually go to the website of the Times News, and if you answer some questions about reverse mortgage, you'll actually be able to see the Times News story online. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, the U.S. State Department, and its contractors are colonizing Idaho and thus making the construction of a mosque in Magic Valley inevitable. And what they do is they have a link at this website, this Refugee Resettlement Watch, and the link shows you who these contractors are. I looked this up. I clicked on the link. None of these people actually live in the Northwest. All of these contractors are in California. Some are in Alabama. They are in various separate states around the country. None of them actually live near here, but they reap a heck of a profit off resettling these people in our communities. They wouldn't think about even resettling them within 50 miles of their own homes or 500 miles, but it's okay to bring these people here. You're up next, and you're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Yes, Bill, one interesting question that you should have is that Sean Berry from CSI come on your show and explain why CSI is so in support of this when they keep raising the tuitions of the regular students, and Obama wants to pay all these student loans off. But if CSI is something like that with 300 some refugees and give them free schooling, free housing, then the other kids at CSI are paying for it with the tuitions plus our taxpayers' money, and that's not what college is for.
And I thank you for the call, and I have a thought on that, and it's this. And I don't know, I don't have anybody officially from CSI to respond at the moment. Maybe we can find someone to do that, as he suggests. But when you bring these people into this country and there is suddenly, well, we need to train them. We've got to give them some English classes. We've got to get them some skills. But CSI is not eating that cost. Somebody else is coming in and writing the check and handing it to CSI. CSI doesn't care. But that adds to perhaps, I don't know, an $18 trillion national debt. CSI gets its payment. That's all. To me, that's what it seems. That's my belief as to what's going on here. And then, well, Bill, this isn't actually taxpayer money. This was a grant. Well, where the heck did that come from? How, do these grants grow on trees and they just walk through? If that's all it was, we would all be rich, wouldn't we? We'd all have a little grove behind our house so we could go out and pull the dollars off of there, go pay for whatever we wanted. It's my belief that the college with its resettlement program is profiting handsomely from this. And yes, we did not have anybody from the college on air on the program this week, but that has nothing to do with this. That was just a couple of scheduling issues we had where we weren't able to bring anyone in. And I don't know that we would put Ella on the spot about that. That's not her, certainly not her role. And she's just a student who's working on obviously a career perhaps in public relations when she's done because she's got some skill at it. But you need to go to the people at the top. And the people at the top can answer that question. What do they get? Do they do this out of the goodness of their own hearts? Or do they do it because somebody is giving them a check? And my guess is there may be occasionally among some of them a little of the first that think they're doing the right thing. I don't think they are, but they think they're doing the right thing. I think, though, what we're looking at is more likely the latter, is it enriches the College of Southern Idaho. You've got so many people in this country, when it comes to profit over the future of the country, they'll take profit. That's short-term thinking. And then if you criticize that, they tell you that you're a bigot or a racist. And see, that's how they counter that when you bring these subjects up in the course of any particular conversation. Once again, the telephone number to reach us is 736-0300. We have another caller joining us on News Radio 1310 KLIX and Top Story with Bill Colley. And you're up next, in fact. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. This is Pat. And some people may call me a kook baby, but I believe that if we keep allowing these Muslims into our communities, to me it's like allowing a cancer to start growing because you can't control it once it starts. And it'd be fine if they would absorb into our communities, but they keep to themselves. They still practice their Sharia law amongst themselves and then try to encourage it to push it on to us. No matter what anybody believes, we're still the enemy. I don't think there's ever any love in their heart for Christians or anyone that is not Muslim, and they don't even like their own Muslims, and so I don't know what to do with them.
Of course, they just no different than liberals. They don't have any love for Christians either. So I guess
That's
they
true.
figure they can make common cause.
I agree with you on that one, 100%.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call, sir. Actually, I'm going to mention that in perhaps the next segment of the program. I saw something today before I went on air that made me think, if you're a Christian in this country, you've better figure out a way to build that shelter out back or find a bug-out location because things are going to get mightily rough if we continue to go in this direction. Isn't it strange, though? The liberals who claim that they aren't capitalists or that they don't like money, that's a better way to put it, they don't like money, they're getting the checks for these resettlement programs. Two, they claim that it's the right thing to do. They're going to tell the Muslims when they arrive, though, oh, by the way, we're going to have same-sex marriage, and by the way, let's have a ham sandwich and a glass of wine and discuss it. They have some feeling that they're doing the right thing, but the people that they are inviting in here, they look at Christians and conservative Christians might be a better way to put it. Traditional people who actually have a Bible-based faith, unlike, let's say, Unitarian Universalists who are just making it up as they go along day by day. What you've got is these people who are inviting all of the folks who cannot ever culturally adapt into this country. And at some point, you know what? It's a bit like this. You can see the refugee coming in saying, oh, thank you very much, liberal. I will kill you last. In other words, you're a useful idiot for the time being. But when push comes to shove and we get rid of all of the opposition, then we're going to come for you. Because because in the Muslim world, they have no use for anybody who believes in abortion or anybody who believes in same-sex relationships. This is all going to be gone if these people would ever take over in this country. They would just simply wipe out American liberalism. It would become a historical artifact. And yet, Libby out there, he wants to keep arguing that this is the right thing to do, you filthy racist, something the American right. You need to know better than that. 9:18. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. FYI, I'm watching the monitor. It was just a story from downtown Baltimore. It's a reporter standing in the middle of the street, and he's pointing one direction, then he's pointing another direction. That's considered great TV. Over here we have a bus going by. Over here to my left, we have a building. It hasn't moved in the last several hours. But they've got their teams all deployed around Baltimore following this news conference this morning where they announced, the announcement was 6 police officers are going to be charged in a homicide for the death of this Freddie Gray fellow who had 20 prior arrests at least. And yet, that's a discussion we want to get into at another point. But they're all waiting for the riot to start again, and all the TV cameras all set up and ready to go here. I got a gut feeling about this. Things are going to still get a little bit nasty there before the weekend comes to an end. But just to tell you that nothing is going on now, but it's not even noon yet. And the dope dealers and thugs, they don't get up before noon. The crack mall ends. That comes to a close at about sunrise, so they're all sleeping in. But you've got to watch what happens there later today, because like vampires rising from the casket, they'll pop up before just about the time sunset arrives tonight. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you. Speaking of people of faith being tried, we've got some more details on that on the way. Christians on the run once more in this country, being harassed by government and the American left. It's 48 at our studios. It's 9:20. I have been telling people for the last couple of months about a great job opportunity if you're looking for a little extra family income. You can become a school bus driver. And you can contact Western States Bus Services, where the folks there are hiring part-time bus drivers right now, split shifts, 5 days per week, summers off, and scheduled, no school days. Pay is $10.75 an hour. You can apply today by contacting 733-8003. Western States Bus Services is an equal opportunity employer. So people of religious faith, again, if you're a Muslim, you're a protected minority by the American political establishment, at least the leftist political establishment, and their allies, which is 99.9% of establishment media in this country. But if you're a Christian, oh my goodness, we're going to have to eradicate you. That's the feeling I get when I read about what's happening across the country with people who just essentially are standing up for their beliefs. And they believe it's more powerful than government. And unfortunately, government is saying, no. God is secondary to us. The Daily Signal has this today. U.S. immigration exam replaces freedom of religion with freedom of worship. Subtle, isn't it, how they go about doing this? Slowly planting the seeds and then letting them germinate. It's 9:25. Bill Colley with you on Top Story 49 at our studios. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. The writer, Kelsey Harkness, says, a Republican senator from Oklahoma pressed Department of Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson at a hearing Wednesday about why the U.S. is, quote, misrepresenting, unquote, Americans' First Amendment right to freedom of religion to immigrants who are applying to become U.S. citizens. That could include the 300 Syrians who will soon be your neighbors. Quote, we in the United States actually have freedom of religion, not freedom of worship, unquote. Senator James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, told Johnson during a Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs hearing. Lankford was referring to the department's decision to include, quote, freedom of worship, unquote, instead of freedom of religion as a basic American right listed in the civics test that all immigrants must take to become a naturalized U.S. citizen. Now, you understand what's going on here, right? This is question 51, by the way, in that exam that these people are taking, question 51. And it says, what are two rights of everyone living in the United States? And it gives you about half a dozen choices, none of which are freedom of religion, but one of those is freedom of worship. Now, they're gradually changing this. For what reason? Well, President Obama always makes reference to freedom of worship. He does not make reference in his speeches to freedom of religion. In other words, according to the American left, you have the liberty to go down the street on a Sunday morning, or if you're an Adventist, on a Saturday night, or in some case Friday, but you have the advantage of one day a week going down to the local building, going inside behind closed doors where no one else can see you, and worshiping your God, which of course the left doesn't even believe exists. And then once that hour is up, you come out of there, and then the rest of the week you are supposed to live the life prescribed by Barack Obama and his minions in the the Democrat Party. That's how that is supposed to work in this country. And so when you argue, look, my religious faith is something I live 7 days a week, therefore I cannot bake a cake for a same-sex. Whoa, no. You've got your freedom of worship. Don't give me this, that on Tuesday when you're working in the office, that you're a Christian. No, you're just a baker today. This is what they are doing. This is how the scheme has been set about since the beginning. This is an effort to try and move that ball quietly and slowly, and it's incrementally. You know, there was a story I remember watching. I have a companion book at home, but I watched the TV series called 10,000 Day War. I was in high school at the time when it came out in the 1970s, and it was a well-done program about what happened in Southeast Asia with the Vietnam War, but they traced it all, 10,000 days, they traced it all the way back to World War II when the Japanese occupied the area. Then the French came back in. Then the French were driven out by the communists. Then the Americans came in, and then the Americans fought for a decade or so with the communists before it was all over. And there was one of the communist officials, it might have been General Giap, who was the leader of the North Vietnamese regulars. And he said during the interview, we knew we were going to win, simply because we had been fighting this war against invaders for 2,000 years, going all the way back to various Chinese armies and other neighboring armies from this part of the world. We just knew that it wasn't going to be an overnight success. So we won by incrementalism, that is, little small steps here and there. It's a patience that is remarkable, and we see it on the left. We see it on the left in places like Vietnam. We see it on the left in places like Europe. And we're seeing it with the American left. It may take 2 generations. They started in the 1960s in this country, but they have been very gradually hammering away at traditional culture. And it's picking up steam now because with the inertia, it's like rolling downhill. And we're going to see more and more of this as time goes on. I've got a couple of other details. But a writer today at Wall Street Journal says one of the modern sins is actually holding on to your religious beliefs. And I equate it to that comment made by Justice Scalia when a fellow got up and cited the other day during the Supreme Court arguments that same-sex marriage was an abomination against the Lord. And when they told the guy out, Scalia said that was refreshing. And that angered liberals that he would say that it was refreshing to hear someone say it was an abomination. But the guy in the back of the room, a preacher likely, was just citing the Bible, which Scalia is familiar with. Lefty wouldn't know that. But that's considered to be an insult because he said it was refreshing that someone cited the Bible. Holy smoke. 9:30, 49 at our studios. This is Top Story. Did anyone, and I think someone referenced this the other day when they were on the one of our callers to the program, Samuel Alito, he's another one of our U.S. Supreme Court justices. they alluded to a series of questions he asked one of the lawyers who was arguing that same-sex marriage is an equal right. Because even the newspapers call it marriage equality, and over at MSDNC and CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, marriage equality. Well, this was a word that was coined actually by the people in the movement. And then media, which of course tells you it is not biased, adopted it and said, oh, that's wonderful. Even the New York Times has a policy any longer where they won't use the word homosexual. They use gay because they say homosexual is a pejorative. Well, it's a scientific technical term is all it is. Why do they use gay, which means happy? Because that's what their fellow travelers want them to use. So when any argument that they are unbiased is a bunch of baloney. We know that, and that's fairly obvious. You can cite it in just a few of those examples. So Alito has one of these leftist lawyers in front of him. She's making the argument for same-sex marriage and equality, as they're calling it. And of course, now the argument that I had heard the day before this actually went to court on Tuesday, heard a great argument from a writer in the Washington Times who said, well, wait a second. Everybody has equality when it comes to the definition of marriage. A man can marry a woman and a woman can marry a man. So what's the difference? It doesn't matter who you are. You all have the same equal right to go out and do this. So we're getting this argument. This woman is there pontificating, and all of a sudden Alito says, well, wait a minute. What if two men come in and two women, and they want a marriage to include all four of them? And all of a sudden she went, and said, well, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think states would want to do that definition. Well, wait a minute. I mean, why can't, if you're going to have same-sex marriage and you call that equality, and there's a right to that, then why? The Constitution doesn't say anything about polygamy either now, does it? So why can't you have two men and two women coming in saying the four of us would all like to be in one marriage? And their argument will be, and I was reading this great piece this morning. It said the argument will be, well, this will be even better because then the children will have four parents to look after them. Therefore, if three are at work, making enough money to pay the mortgage, there can be a fourth one at home watching after the kids. Won't that be great? So we're headed in that direction. And what's to stop us from marrying horses, cows, and pigs? Because someone may come in and say, that makes me happy. Well, we wouldn't want to get in the way of that. So that's the next one. And how about this NAMBLA, this Man-Boy Love Association, or whatever it's called? They're going to come in and say, well, this actually makes us happy, and we believe it's good for the child, and who are you to say it isn't? So therefore, I'm going to marry this 9-year-old over here. And then I'm going to drag him home and abuse him. Oh, I didn't say that. No. But I think it's my right. And we're opening up the door to all of this. And Alito's question, some people may say on the left it's absurd, but it raises a great point. This argument will come up. And then what? And all of a sudden, her only response was, no, you can't redefine marriage like that. Well, wait a minute. You're here trying to redefine marriage before us right now. So how can you say... the poor woman, I think, was for all of the law schools she had been to and all of the various cases she had argued, it must have been that moment, that oops moment that you get every once in a while. It's that moment when you think you're just breaking wind, and unfortunately it's something worse. And, of course, she was immediately seen outside on the steps of the Supreme Court begging someone for a sand shovel. 9:38, Bill Colley with you this morning. We're up to 51. We're on our way to about 80 before the day is over with. Be a much warmer day today. Yesterday, I was out for an afternoon walk along the Canyon Trail, and I decided to walk down to the visitor center. And I went into the visitor center, and I took a picture of the stagecoach, which they moved inside. Saw one of our city councilors there, of course, Sean Berrigar, who was getting ready for a presentation. They had an afternoon presentation with a grand opening. So they were putting up all of these chairs outside, and there was a tent. But being that it was only about 60 degrees, anybody who had to sit in the shade under the tent was likely going to be a little bit chilly yesterday because that breeze does blow in pretty strongly off that canyon. And of course, I thought I might stick around for this, and then it hit me. Well, I'm standing there in a T-shirt and some shorts, and my Under Armour is too long, so the bottom of my Under Armour is sticking out from my shorts all the way down to my knees, and I thought, nah, I'm not really dressed for this type of thing. So I turned, well, not that they wanted us there anyway. I never got an invitation. Coming up on 9:39, Bill Colley with you. We've got about 20 minutes left in the program today. Mike Huckabee's last day with the Huckabee Report, I believe, is this morning. And that's because sometime early next week, Governor Huckabee is going to be, I think it's on Tuesday, he's announcing officially that he's a candidate for president. And with that, we're curious as to who's going to be filling in for him. I have already voiced my support for Fred Thompson, who I think is really he's got the charm and the voice for doing radio, and I think he's the natural. He's done it before. He had done it for a while when he was also on the beach politically. Mitt Romney did it for a while, but there'll be some new voice we'll be hearing shortly in the coming weeks, and it may be a whole series of people beforehand. But we're looking forward to hearing the final wrap-up today from the governor in just a few minutes. 51 at our studios. It's 20 minutes from 10 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Wow, my week is almost over in just a matter of minutes. Tell you what, I just, some weekends, there are things that come up. I'll be getting up early tomorrow morning. Once you're in the habit of it, you can't sleep in late. I was doing a morning talk show some years ago, and I was on the air from 5 a.m. until 9. So I'd get up on work days at 2 o'clock, eat my breakfast, take a quick shower, start getting some things ready for the program, drive to work, get to the office by 3:15, get everything collated and brought together for the following show. Get out of work about noon, go home, and try to keep busy and the like. But then I'd get to a weekend, and I would think, well, I'm not going to set the alarm. But after about 2 o'clock in the morning, you start waking up anyway. Sometimes you can go back to bed, but by 3:45 in the morning, I would be, my eyes just wide open. And so I'd get up, and there was a place called the Express Mart, which was, I lived in a nice development by a great big town park. It had been a county park, but then was handed over to the local town. But this beautiful park next door to me. But on the other side of the park was this place called the Express Mart, and I lived in a small town. The Express Mart was the only thing. You got 1,200 people in town. The Express Mart is the only place where there's any activity going on at 3:45, 4 o'clock in the morning. So I would go over to Express Mart on weekends, and back in the day before the internet really became a huge item, I would like to go over there and get a morning newspaper. That newspaper even doesn't exist anymore, put out of business by the internet, but I'd go get the morning newspaper. And I'd always walk in, and there'd always be 3 or 4 sheriff's deputies, a couple of local town police officers, and maybe a trooper all standing there drinking their coffee. And I used to think, this is the safest place to be on a weekend morning, and it's the only place open in town. So I'd stop and say hello to everybody, and then grab my newspaper and head home. And I'd have the newspaper read, even on a Sunday, everything I wanted to read by 5 o'clock in the morning. Then what do you do the rest of the day? So I'll be up bright and early tomorrow, and sometimes I find that on a Saturday or Sunday there is something that's going on. It is so compelling. I wish I was at a microphone. No one wants to work 7 days a week. Well, some people don't have any choice. Cows don't say to yourself, come to you and say, well, look, we'll take the weekend off too. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. But there are things that happen during the course of my weekends, and I just wish, I got to be on the air. 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, that's too far away. So I'm still struggling with some of those issues in my life. Not that it's upsetting my stomach. I've been able to give up the Prilosec, so I don't have any serious issues with it other than just the steam comes out of my ears when there's no opportunity to vent. Got a couple of other quick points this morning before we get near the end of the program, just very fast. I saw this. There's been a big push in media lately. This is the second story I've seen about this in less than a week, which, again, planting the seeds. Why Tesla's announcement is such a big deal, the coming revolution in energy storage. That's a very exciting, of course, and compelling headline from the Washington Post. And then it says, this story has been updated. Doesn't say it's been corrected, but who knows? I didn't see it beforehand, so I'm seeing only the update. Pravda on the Potomac goes on to say a study by GTM Research, whoever the heck that is, and the Energy Storage Association earlier this year found that while storage remains relatively niche, the market was sized at just $128 million in 2014. It also grew 40% last year, and 3 times as many installations are expected this year. They're going around selling batteries that are about the size of a dormitory refrigerator, and people are able to store power there. So if the power goes out for 3 days, they've got about 3 days worth of energy in these batteries. The problem is you can't afford them. Well, all right, there are some of you who may be listening who are, you've already got your reward and you are very wealthy in this temporal realm, and you may be able to afford them. The average American can't, and I'm sure it's a little bit like solar panels. If you go to somebody and say, well, look, this thing is $50,000, the government will say, tell you what, we'll give you 25 grand we collected from the poor, and so then you can go buy one of these things with your own 25 grand. And then the rich guy goes, whoo-hoo, and walks off with your money, another subsidy welfare for the rich in this country. The writer actually has a quote here from a guy named Tom Kimbis, a vice president of executive affairs at the Solar Energy Industries Association. Again, where do they come up with all of these offices? Quote, storage is a game changer, unquote. Now, this is all well and good, but I think that the price, if it's still $50,000 for one of these big batteries to sit in the middle of your house, so you could have 3 days worth of electricity from that, I just don't see it flying anytime soon. It's not going to become a big deal. And I've been hearing people talk for 25 years. I remember doing an interview way back in the early 1990s with a guy who was telling me, oh, we'll have more electric cars on the road because batteries will just become so efficient. Well, 25 years later, lots of things have become more efficient. Batteries have not. It hasn't happened. Meanwhile, in order to store all of that energy, you're still going to have to burn natural gas, coal, and oil. In fact, we burn more oil for electricity generation now than we actually burn coal because Mr. Obama doesn't like coal. Well, there's some issues there related to the color of it, I suppose, and that's why, we'll get into that another day too, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to have to, in order to generate all of this electricity, we're going to have to use the very fossil fuels, which really aren't from fossils, that the left doesn't like in the first place. So how is that a solution? You know what they'll have you do? They'll just give everybody a treadmill without a cord, and you'll run on that treadmill whenever you're cold. That'll warm you up for the future. The Huckabee Report is brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. You can reach them by dialing 736-6563. And thank you very much. He didn't have any tears at the end. Well, he's expecting that his next job is going to be considerably more important. 9:54, coming up on 9:55, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You can reach our program, be one of the last callers of the week if you like, at 736-0300, 736-0300. My email address, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. And I'd like to thank, of course, the callers already today, as well as our guest, Brigitte Gabriel, for taking a few minutes to join us. And remember, she is speaking next week in Caldwell. That'll be at 7 o'clock on next Thursday, May 7th. And that is going to be at the Deer Flat Church, in Caldwell on Thursday. Deer Flat Church. And she's going to be warning people there about the dangers of Islam and what it could well mean, even in the Pacific Northwest, where there's this huge move to resettle these people here. You realize there was a story out a number of years ago. A great big swath of Idaho supposedly is under the control of the Chinese communists. I remember reading this story nearly 10 years ago, and that they are looking to build they're hoping to bring entire communities of their own. And this has happened before. China went into Vietnam. Vietnam thought, oh, wow, this is going to be a great investment. China coming here and opening factories. China did. And then China brought in all of its own workers from China, put them up in dormitories, and no Vietnamese people were actually hired. And these are things that are being done sometimes right under our noses. We've got so many distractions in life. It's very difficult to keep track of all of these things when they're happening around us. And unfortunately, I can remember many, many years ago, I was living in the area of Binghamton, New York, which is on the Pennsylvania-New York state line, just north of Scranton, Pennsylvania, on Interstate 81. And I would occasionally drive north into the Finger Lakes region, and I would drive up the interstate, and I used to pass this odd-shaped, it looked like a great big gate, but almost like one of these gates out of these movies about old Persia. And it was off the road a few hundred feet to my right when I would be driving north. Years later, I discovered it was an Islamic training camp. And it's still in business, to my knowledge. They've set these things up all over. You can't stop them from going out there and doing military exercises. If they're claiming they're not hurting anybody, but they have these things all over the country. And here we sit saying, well, our government tells us this isn't a problem. And when anybody in government finally brings it up, the newspapers go rake them over the coals for even talking about it. Oh, those racists. Well, again, Lefty over at the newspaper, he's on the naughty list when it comes to all of these people who are coming into this country. They should never, ever forget that. Couple of quick things before we wrap up today. I saw an opening to a newspaper column at the Wall Street Journal. Daniel Henninger, who writes for the Journal, has a piece called Al Sharpton's Baltimore. And he opens it up with no justice, no peace. You've heard that phrase from Al Sharpton before? And he says, the writer says, in Baltimore, they've got both. So we'll see what happens because of the findings. There'll be more details during Rush's show, I'm sure, about that coming up in a few minutes. The prosecutor in Baltimore, the state's attorney, has come forward and said that the death of Freddie Gray, the man who died after he was picked up by police a few weeks ago, has now been classified a homicide. 6 Baltimore police officers are charged. We'll have to see what happens in that city over the course of the weekend. 9:58. Bill Colley with you on Top Story, and God willing and the creek don't rise, I'm back in this chair Monday morning between 8 and 10 o'clock. Rush following news from Fox at 10 o'clock. Sean Hannity following news from Fox at 1 o'clock. Glenn Beck following news from Fox at 4 o'clock. Dave Ramsey tonight and overnight, coast to coast. Hope you can stick around.